Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Tanzyn Crawford about Tiny Beautiful Things on Hulu. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, it's so exciting. I mean, source material or like something that's kind of adapted by something, because this was a very popular book. I find it interesting because obviously you want to do it justice and there's a lot kind of going through your mind and everything. But at the end of the day, this is not the book. This is the series for Hulu. So it's going to be its own thing. Were you focused on the source material a lot? Were you just kind of focused on just kind of doing it justice? Like, I'm curious about that. What was your mindset with the source material?
Well, I feel like I was quite lucky because I read the book during the show and then a bit before the show as well. And there's not really anything about a daughter. I mean, Cheryl didn't have a daughter this age at the time. So I feel like I did definitely get free reign over the character to make it how it was. I mean, I was in a position like Kathryn or Sarah where everything was so like very detailed in the book. Like I could kind of just make up whatever I wanted to.
No, 100%. It's interesting because the journey of seeing something on script and then actually kind of bringing it to life on screen and looking at it at Video Village always interests me. So I'm just curious what your kind of mindset is, kind of seeing that in the script, seeing these characters and seeing this kind of relationship that is very complex. And, at times, the audience member doesn't kind of understand the complexity sometimes, I feel like. And then what's that like kind of actually going and like filming it and seeing it specifically and putting it to life from the page to the screen? Like that interests me a lot.
Right. It is a completely different experience reading it yourself. Even like a table read when we're all there reading our parts, you're still sitting down, you're not really getting into it. So it's hard to get a feel of how it's actually going to go. And also in the beginning, we were also new to each other and we didn't know how we all worked or what our relationship would be like. So it was the first couple scenes that I shot. It was interesting to see the difference between our table read and how we could like invent this relationship out of nowhere and really like slap it on screen. But I think it was quite easy because we all, being an actor, you kind of have an understanding that now you have to be in this world with this other person where you have this invented life. So I just think it's really fun. And also it's so interesting to like read a script, read someone else's lines and have your own interpretation of what they're saying. And then you do the scene with them and they're doing it a completely different way. And it takes you by surprise. That's always like one of my favorite parts when you have like a genuine reaction. You're like, oh, I didn't think of the line that way. So
were there a lot of moments where you're looking at the script and you go and then you go and film and everything and it's like unseen and cut and everything and you're like, wow, like this actually felt a lot different than I thought it was going to be? Well, did that happen quite a bit?
I think it was like probably just with most of the fight scenes, yeah. I like imagined a level in my mind of what we would get up to. Mm-hmm. And everyone on set was always like, more. So I think it was just like those kinds of scenes where I was like, okay, so they really want like 150%. And I was picturing it like 80%, So those kinds of scenes, definitely.
I find it very interesting because there are two audience members that are watching a lot of content these days, Tanzyn. There's in my opinion, passive audience member that, just has their phone and is just kind of like watching it on their phone and not really paying attention. Then there's the active audience member where it's kind of like phones away, phones down, pay attention. They're almost like a detective, almost kind of figuring everything out. I find when I watch this series, you will miss a lot if you're not paying attention. Like, put your phone away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you should be doing that with everything. I can't stand when I suggest a movie to someone. I'm like, let's have a movie day. And then they sit there on the phone the whole time. And I'm like, can we just can we do it? It's like an hour and a half.
Or
Let's just
to kind of add to that, the movie nights that you start too late, so like you're getting like the people are getting kind of tired. Like
then you pause the movie halfway and then you never finish it with them.
I've had those movie nights. It's funny because I've had those movie nights with like horror movies where I'm like up freaking out, and then some of my friends are kind of dozing off, and it's like, how can you sleep right now? It's terrifying.
I have to do it in one hit, otherwise I know my attention span won't be coming back to it at a later date, unless I'm like really into it.
Oh, we're getting into like binging now and watching. There was a question there. So like, but like the question though was more like the fact that, do you notice how detailed the show is when you're reading the script for it? Because that's something I've kind of noticed, especially with like Kathryn and, you know, the conversations that she has with her daughter and the flashbacks. There's a lot of like really detailed things, especially in the flashbacks, that I really loved about this.
Right. Yeah. I honestly I tried not to really delve too much in the flashback parts. I just kept it in my scenes. But, you know, when we did our table reads and stuff, I'd be like, oh, you know, that's why I'm saying that, or whatever she said. So there was like some things where I just kind of had to wait until somebody else said it for me to be like, oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Because I just kind of stuck to my timeline.
It's interesting as well because I do find that you look at a lot of the kind of shows and movies that are out right now, there is kind of a lot of genre bending and a lot of like, I've watched a lot of like comedies that have drama in them and like everything. You kind of know what you sign up for with Tiny Beautiful Things. And I think there is something cool about that in a world where there's a lot of kind of different content where you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. But maybe you don't know what you're getting yourself into because it is very kind of emotional intense, right?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I love that all the trailers and everything led with the fact that you will be crying at some point during the show. But I think it's like, it's so nice to, you know, like go into something knowing that it's going to be a bit of a heart wrecker or whatever, but being surprised with like how funny it is, or you know, how relatable everything feels. So yeah, I love that about our show.
Absolutely. I feel like you've been asked, like this question now I'm asking you is like the one question that you've been asked a lot. I try to kind of ask certain mindset questions that maybe you're not asked all the time. Maybe I messed up. Maybe you're like, actually, Pete, people ask me those questions all the time. And I'm like, well, thanks. But like, working with Kathryn, I'm just curious about that. I'll make it more kind of, I'll make it more of a detailed question. What are those conversations like about those like big, intense kind of drama scenes? Because I feel like there's going to be kind of those conversations that you're going to have with her just like, you know, before like getting on set and everything. But like, is there any kind of dialogue with you two about those big kind of intense emotional scenes?
Yeah, for sure. Like before any scene where I was like crying or we were all screaming or whatever it was, Kathryn made it feel like a very safe environment. She'd always be like, okay, we're just doing the scene and then we're exiting and then we can hang out behind the set. She, you know, was always like, we're in this together. So we'd have like, we didn't really talk about how much, what we were going to do in the scene. It was just like behind the scenes of, you know, like we're here for each other. You don't have to be nervous. Because like I do a lot of yelling in this and I was like, I want to yell at Kathryn Hahn. Like some of this was really mean, but then Stacey, one of the directors was like, okay, now in this scene, you really got to make her cry. And I was like, okay, if it's got to be done. So, but it never was like, it always felt very safe and that we were everyone was in it together. No one felt like left behind. So
no, absolutely. What was the audition process like in terms of how much you were able to kind of know about the character and the scripts? Like, did you know what it was character-wise or anything? Because I feel like every audition changes and is different, right? Sometimes they tell you a lot, sometimes they don't tell you much. Like, did you know a good amount?
I know that on the audition email that I got, I know that they said Kathryn was already in the show.
Okay, she was already attached. Yeah, okay.
She was already attached, yeah. And I'm pretty sure they also said it was Tiny Beautiful Things, like based off the book, like they had the title in there as well. So I like looked up the book and everything, but character-wise, it was just kind of like a vague description of like teenage daughter that has problems with her parents, and is confused about her life. Like that was kind of the description. So yeah, it was a little bit vague. And then when I did the callback scene, I don't think I got any new information. I just got a different scene. Yeah, so I just kind of did my interpretation of what the vague description was.
It's crazy that when I ask, because I think one of my favorite kind of questions that I always ask is the audition question, because it's always different. Like no one has, like, you see that what you just told me, like that's Tanzyn Crawford's audition story. Like nobody has that. You know what I mean? Like that's, it's yours.
Right. So I feel like there's some that I get where they like send a 3-page PDF that like describes every character, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so helpful, the backstory of everyone. And then sometimes they give you like 3 lines of like she's 18.
Untitled drama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So good. When you get a chance to watch this on Hulu, and I hope they do because it's great. It hits hard. You will cry, like you said. You will cry. You might not. You might even cry like more than once. That's
I know what's happening, and I'm crying. So
it's no, it's tough. I feel like okay. Before I ask what you hope they get out of it, very quickly, the self-reflection component is something that I really, really was interested in, because during the pandemic, I feel like we were doing a lot of self-reflection and soul searching because we had the time to do so. All the characters in the show, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's obvious with your character and Kathryn, like, are doing a lot of figuring things out. You know what I mean? So I feel like when you watch a show like this, because of the pandemic, like I said, with the self-reflection, I feel like Tiny Beautiful Things becomes more relatable. I'm curious if you ever thought about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I did, like the past couple of years have just been, very hard for everybody. So I think it's like such a nice show to, even if it's not, I mean, there's no mention of the pandemic in the show, but it's just nice to see that something now where someone doesn't have everything together after, years of just chaos in the world. So I just think it's like a really good timing of, okay, it's okay if you're still a little bit behind, because we've all been behind for 3 years. I feel like my last 3 years of life don't count. So I'm basically still a teenager. So that's how I feel. And I just think it's like, yeah, it's such good timing for it to come out, because there's no pressure to have to like be back on track.
What do you hope people get out of it when they watch it? I mean, we talked about it. It is very emotional. It's an important show in my opinion as well. Anything specific takeaway wise when they get to watch it on Hulu, Tanzyn?
I think what is the beauty of the book and this series now as well is that every little reply is so tailored to exactly what you want to hear. Like you and I are going to hear the same thing and get 2 completely different things out of it. So I just think whatever advice that you need in your life right now, you're going to hear it no matter what, because there's just so much information in this show that you're going to get something out of it. And I can't really tell you what that is, because I don't know where that person is in life. But yes, I just think there's like just a little bit of advice in there for everyone, even if it's minor, even if it, you watch it and it's just a good watch and entertaining, or someone that hears something and they're like, yes, that is a huge whatever that I now need to change. It just really depends on where they're at in life.
Absolutely. That's so well said. Tanzyn, thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting with you on Popternative.
Thank you so much for having me.
So they're going to be able to check out the show on Hulu. And your Instagram account, is it just your name if people want to keep up to date with everything? Is it just Tanzyn Crawford, or is it something?
Yeah, it's Tanzyn Crawford.
Okay, you're great. You know how many stories I hear, like people are like, I tried to get this, but it was taken. You know what I mean?
No, I was so fine. I didn't get Instagram until maybe I was like 17. Nobody had it. I could type it right in and I was fine.
That's also, that's amazing. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, it's Tanzyn Crawford and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.